Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice full Zendo this morning. That's great. So here we are. Hi, everyone. I have a student who is doing some hospice training, and she shared something with me that they are using during their training called the Tree of Contemplative Practices. And it's on your brochure. It came out pretty good, print's a little small, but it's a pretty good reproduction. I believe it's also in the chat for folks online, and anyone could find this by going to contemplativemind.org. So this is a tree which represents in its branches the various practices that one can engage in. Things like meditation, yoga, storytelling, deep listening. And this is from the Center for Contemplative Mind in Society, which, by the way, gave permission to share this and encouraged folks to do so. And that group, their mission statement, I suppose, says, they are grounded in an inclusive, anti-racist vision, and they work to engage contemplative practices to genuinely advance the well-being of society. And so it's not specifically a Buddhist organization, but that's fine. Contemplative has to do with deep meditation and reflection, and I think it fits us pretty well. And the moment that my student mentioned this, I thought that would be a good subject for a Dharma talk. To kind of explore the variety of practices that are open to us. And I also felt kind of a need to talk about this because I think our tradition, Japanese Soto Zen, can send kind of a one-sided message or maybe kind of mixed messages sometimes about what kinds of practices are appropriate. Sometimes kind of a narrow message. So I want to make sure that we're providing an inclusive message here. And the reason that I think it can seem a little one-sided is because we place so much emphasis on meditation, which is a great thing. Meditation is wonderful. It is a wonderful path toward awakening. So, we have a sitting before every talk, or maybe a couple of sittings. We often encourage people to engage in retreats, and it's a good emphasis. Silent, intense. I didn't mean to say intense. I meant to say, I guess I did. Silent, intense meditation. Doesn't have to always be intense. So, but meditation, silent, intense meditation, is not the only way to do this practice or to awaken. And different people have different abilities and needs and life circumstances. So we need to have a variety of practices available to us. And fortunately, many are available. And it's really not so surprising that we emphasize meditation a lot and that we encourage the kind of precise practice that seems to go well with meditation, given how our tradition developed. Our tradition came from Japan, and it was brought here by Katagiri Roshi. He came to this country in the 60s. He founded this center in the 70s, and he taught us the way he had learned in the Japanese temple system. And in Japan, it is common for someone to run a temple, and their son, or perhaps daughter, I think that has changed some, might take over the temple when they retire. And all of these folks get trained in monasteries when they're young. And so the tradition is very young men are trained in these monasteries, all male monasteries, all Japanese folks of the same age, same gender. They're all full-time residents. So there's kind of this one-size-fits-all way of training them. And it's pretty rigorous and pretty harsh, because these very young, eager people can take that sort of thing. And it's kind of grueling, I think, kind of rigid. I haven't practiced in Japan myself, but I certainly get the flavor of that at some places in this country. And I've read accounts of what it's like at Eiheiji, and it's really remarkable how regimented it is. And that kind of thing is great if it fits you. And it has fit me at some times. When I was younger, I think I had more endurance, and that kind of thing appealed to me a lot. But here we have a non-residential center. It's an urban center. And here we serve, or we hope to serve, every kind of person, regardless of what their life circumstances are. And we recognize that intensive meditation practice is not for everyone. Not everyone has the time or the space in their life to sit a half hour every morning, or to take off weekends to do retreats. Many of us have responsibilities, children, grandchildren, jobs, caretaking, all kinds of things. Not everyone can afford to take a weekend off from work or from their other responsibilities to do a retreat. Not everyone can afford to pay for a retreat. But, by the way, I think we have made an improvement in that regard, paying for retreats. We've made a change, which you may know about, to be more inclusive. And that is that with regard to paying for retreats, we've gone from a fixed fee system to a suggested donation system. So no one should be turned away from anything here due to lack of ability to pay. You pay what you can, and you don't need to ask permission. And we totally welcome everyone to practice with us. And I think that's great. I'm happy about it. But it was kind of a big leap of faith financially, because we do have to pay for all of this. And so I'm just, we're keeping our fingers crossed here. And I think it's going to work. I think success might depend on a number of folks who have the means to pay more than the suggested donation to enable others to practice, or to maybe make a special contribution at some point to enable others to practice. But I think it's going to be a big improvement. So also, there are many of us who have physical limitations that make it hard for us to meditate. And in theory, probably physical limitations shouldn't stop us from meditating, because there are many different ways to meditate, many different postures. You can sit in a chair, you can sit back in a chair if you need to, you can lie flat on your back to do meditation. It doesn't depend on the posture, but still it can make it hard, especially if you have physical pain when you're trying to meditate. But we do need some uniformity in the Zendo as to how we sit, because our tradition is so closely tied with everyone kind of doing the same thing at the same time. And we try to be, accommodating here and there, but it's kind of difficult. We're working on altering our forms to be more accessible. Our tradition has these beautiful choreographed elements like formal oryoki meals, formal walking meditation, certain sitting postures, people wearing robes, which results in standing in a certain posture, and very early morning start times. And these things have been developed over hundreds of years, and they can be really helpful, and they all fit together really well. And I, for one, really want to preserve them. And it seems sometimes like you either have to do them or not do them, because I don't want to see a situation where we just sort of gradually let go of all of the forms until they're all gone. Don't want to water everything down. So it seems like the solution is to preserve these forms for those who can benefit from them and to do them in the traditional way, but also offer a great number of other settings which are less form dependent, less meditation dependent, for those who don't benefit from intensive meditation practice and the strict forms that come with them. So we offer alternatives. We still have Rohatsu, 7-day retreat every December, which is completely traditional. People wear robes. There is chanting, very formal stuff, or yogi meals going on. Our Saturday morning service is very traditional, a lot of chanting, a lot of bowing. But half the retreats that we offer are contemporary, which means that there's very minimal chanting and the forms are very minimal. We have beginner's mind retreats, which are only 3 hours long, great introduction or a great time for kind of a tune-up for your meditation practice. Later this year, we're going to offer a couple of days of practice, we're calling them, which will be a day-long retreat, but less meditation intensive, other activities instead. And now that we have hybrid retreats, that can be pretty helpful, because if you're doing a retreat online, you can almost design your own retreat. If you're here in the Zendo, it's really, it doesn't work so well to get up in the middle of a sitting and leave the Zendo. That might disturb people a little bit. But if you're online, people aren't going to notice you're coming and going. And you can you can leave in the middle of a sitting and go do something else. You can do walking meditation instead. You can come and go. You can change your posture. And I think that can be really helpful. And we're also experimenting with online-only retreats. So we're trying to do this with some flexibility. And I hope folks will be patient with us, because there is a certain inertia here. Whenever you have an institution, you have some inertia. And that's kind of a trade-off we must have. Whenever people come together in order to practice together, we have to have sort of rules and forms that work generally, and there will be times when individually they don't quite work so well. That's the trade-off that we have. And it makes it kind of difficult to change things quickly. We might get a little suggestion like, let's do the acknowledgement of karma and the refuges and the bodhisattva vows on Thursday morning as well. We're already doing them on Tuesday. Let's add that. Seems like a really simple thing. But if we do that, we're altering the balance of contemporary and traditional practice. And I've been saying for a long time that I don't intend to alter that balance, because every time we try to alter it, we have all of these discussions and they go on and on. And it seems like a real comfortable balance that we want to stick with. And also for each little change, it affects so many different people, the doans, the doshi, all of the participants and everything. So we have a little bit of institutional inertia, but that is not a bad thing at all. And this is, I think, what we sign up for. When we sign up to be in community, we're giving up our individual needs a little bit in order to have the benefits of community. And it's a fair exchange, because who wants to practice alone? This is not an easy practice to do alone. And it's a good practice. It's a good practice to need to give up our individual needs, to be challenged by the community to do that. It's the rock tumbler. It's the smoothing of our rough edges based on the needs of the group. And I can almost guarantee that it'll be a challenging practice at some point to be in community in this way. If you stick around long enough, being in community will bring you up against your edge. And you'll have your choice, I think, of softening your edge or saying community is not for me. But having said all of that, I also have to say that I think it's really, really important for a community to not be taken down by its inertia and to do its best to meet the needs of everyone who shows up. And if I may return to the topic of why meditation is not for everyone for a moment, there are some folks for whom meditation is simply not helpful. There are some times, I think, in everyone's lives where meditation may not be helpful. For example, perhaps if we're grieving, if we're seriously grieving the loss of a loved one, it may be that meditation is not going to be a helpful thing at all. We may not have the strength for it. If we've experienced trauma, sitting sometimes our mind might kick in and it can actually kind of reinforce the trauma. You can talk to a teacher about this. Meditation can be very helpful with respect to trauma, but you have to be careful about how you proceed. And sitting silently with others doesn't really work for everyone. But fortunately, we have a whole range of practices we can do in addition to meditation or instead of meditation. If meditation isn't right for us right now, we have all of these other things. So I'm going to look at this tree of contemplative practices, and mention a few of the practices there. And I'm going to add a few which I think are specific to our practice and our center. So this tree, and if you don't have a copy handy, that's okay. I'll just talk you through it. It has two roots, and those are called communion and connection and awareness. And I think those probably kind of correspond to what we have in right view and right intention, which are often listed as the first two steps in the Eightfold Path. Right view, like knowing there's a better way, knowing that it's important to commit, to try to live life in a deliberate way, to try to make things better, that really matters. And then right intention, making a vow to do so. So the first branch is called stillness, and there is meditation there, but it's interesting that it also has quieting the mind, silence, and centering. So you can quiet the mind in contexts other than meditation. There are many ways to do this. You can find your own way, but it might be on a walk, it might be doing a contemplative activity, it might be while you're sewing or while you're doing yard work. We can just keep coming back to the mind. And I would add, above that, I would put another large branch, which would be mindfulness, because mindfulness is a huge part of Zen practice. Taking the same kind of mind that we bring to meditation and bringing it to our activities, which might be simple activities that we enjoy, anything we do throughout our day. And work is a great time to be mindful, and we encourage that here through providing work practice days, which are great because you do some mindful work, but there's also a social aspect to it as well. The next branch is called generative, and it includes quite a few different things. There is visualization. That's not something we do a lot of here, but occasionally we talk about the use of visualization and mantras. It is something that you can incorporate into your practice. Something called beholding, not quite sure what that is. Contemplative reading, study is very important, and we offer many classes here. Loving kindness and compassion meditation. For many people, this is a very important part of their practice, and there are specific techniques, meta practice that you can learn in order to radiate compassion toward others. The next branch is the creative branch, contemplative arts, journaling, which is something I've been doing for years, improvisation, music, and singing. We have a lot of very creative people here who I think really are able to let go, to really enter a meditative state while being creative. And we provide programming that encourages creativity. And the next branch, which is at the top of the tree here, is active. And this has to do with activism in the community, including social justice work. And social justice work not only fulfills our bodhisattva vows, but it can be a mindful practice in and of itself, especially if there's a spiritual element. And I think of vigils and demonstrations I've gone to, which have included a place for clergy, and I've been there wearing my robes and how meaningful that's been for me. And sometimes I've been with a group of people from this center in a small group in a larger demonstration. And it's great. That is wonderful practice. So service, mindful service, intentional service in the social justice context, community context, simply helping out our neighbors, family and friends. It's a vital practice. And this mentions specifically pilgrimage to areas where social justice issues are highlighted. That pilgrimage, I like that. Activism, work and volunteering, vigils and marches, bearing witness. The next one is relational, deep listening. We talk a lot about right speech, another part of the Eightfold Path, and deep listening is something we can do throughout our day. Council circle, we have council here. Our next one is May 15th, and it's going to have as a topic looking at the results of the demographic survey that we recently did and talking about diversity in the Sangha. Storytelling. We actually do a lot of storytelling here. And if you really can get someone talking here, a good way to do that is just ask the question, so what brought you here? What brought you here to Zen Center? It's very likely you're going to get a very interesting story if you do that. And I love to hear those stories from people. I would add another small branch here for social stuff. I mean, Sangha is one of the three, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the three treasures. Sangha is so important. And the social component of that is huge. And we have our tea after our talk. We have all of our wonderful membership committee events. That's a great committee, very lively. The summer picnic, the new member teas, movie nights, this thing we do on New Year's Eve. I would put in another branch for children's practice. You can come here with your kids. And I would do yet another branch on the relational element here for relationship with a teacher. Teachers are always available to talk. In Zen, that's a very important relationship. Then we have movement, walking meditation, yoga, dance, aikido, qigong, tai chi. Many people engage in those practices here. I would add a separate branch here for sewing. Sewing is such a big part of our practice. It has been for hundreds of years. And that is something that you can engage in if you do initiation. And we have folks undertaking initiation right now. And then finally is ritual practice. It's called ritual cyclical here. Establishing a sacred personal space, going on retreats, ceremonies and rituals based in spiritual or cultural traditions. And you can develop your own rituals or use rituals that have been in your family or another religious tradition maybe that you were raised in, or participate in ritual here. And I always like to encourage folks to, if they're not too sure about the ritual, to give it a try and to see what's there. So it might be helpful for you to think about the range of practices that's open to you. If you go to this website, contemplativemind.org, you scroll down to the tree, you can print out a blank tree, and you can fill in your own. And it might be good, if you're trying to sort of chart a path to talk to a teacher about that. But there's one thing I would like to add here, because I don't want to be misunderstood. In advocating for a variety of practices, I'm not advocating that one just sort of move from practice to practice and sort of flit about. It's okay to move from flower to flower like a bee, but don't forget to go back to the hive. And for me, the hive is Zen practice. And I think it's important to find one spiritual path and go into it deeply. And I may try many of these practices, and I have probably tried just about all of them at one point or another, depending on where I am in my life. But for me, the unifying aspect is Zen practice, and these themes are in service of that. And the thread of what Zen practice is so subtle that we need to keep coming back and asking, what is Zen practice, and getting some guidance on that in order to find the thread that is Zen. And it's no thread, by the way. So, to summarize a little bit, meditation is very helpful. It is very important to our tradition. And I encourage people to meditate, to maybe move toward more meditation, if that's appropriate given your present circumstances. If it isn't, there are a great variety of other practices you can pursue. And the one point that I would like you to remember from this talk, if you remember nothing else, is I don't want anyone to feel that they don't have a place here because meditation is not their primary practice. And then finally, I'd just like to ask the question, is practice supposed to be easy or is it supposed to be hard? And I would say both. Practice can be hard. Practice can be a real grind. Practice can be so easy. Ultimately, it's just this, and it's just relaxing into it and letting it be. It's so easy. It's the easiest thing you've ever found. So we embrace this paradox. That's what we do in Zen. We embrace all kinds of paradoxes. And we've had this idea that to become a Buddha, you have to practice for eons, lifetime after lifetime. Or if we want to talk about just this lifetime, you have to do nothing but solid practice for years and years and years. And well, maybe. But then we also have the Lotus Sutra, which came along with this revolutionary message 2,000 years ago and says, no, it doesn't have to be that hard. In fact, it can be easy. And in fact, it goes way over in the other direction, and it says, it can be so simple. You can build a stupa. You can read and recite one line from the Lotus Sutra. You can draw a picture of the Buddha in the sand. That's it. That's all you need to do in order to become a Buddha. You can create art. It's that easy. So any of these practices. And we need both of these aspects because ultimately it is so easy. We need the hard work, but ultimately it is some kind of a letting go. And that's what we're working toward when we put in the hard work. Somehow it happens that all of that hard work prepares us for that moment when we can finally let go. So wherever we are, there is an appropriate practice. That's part of the 6 realms teaching, which is for another time. Whatever realm you find yourself in, there is an appropriate practice. So we should all be able to just rely on our own wisdom as to what to do when. And I encourage open-mindedness with various types of practices, and Zen Center will do its best to continue to provide resources to support this variety of practices. So that's what I have to say, and I wonder if anyone would like to comment or maybe share something a little bit about what you've encountered with other practices and how they fit in with your Zen practice. Katie.
Your talk made me think of my experience with taiko drumming, because it's not one individual, it's community. It's called kumidaiko. You have to listen to and work with all the people you're playing with. So it has the relational aspect, it has the creative aspect, it has the movement aspect, and it really brings it all together and helps you focus. And I found it really helpful. And they have introductory classes at Taiko Arts Midwest, and talk to me if you want to hear about it.
Yeah, that's great.
And
Yeah,
Ted, Judy here.
Judy, yes.
Thinking about other Buddhist communities and different practices that people have. It's been so Zen centric. You know, Zen is what has been recognized as the Buddhism in America, but there's all kinds of Buddhism in America, you know. And when you said everyday people can't always practice Zazen, that's totally true in Japan. You know, monks practice Zazen and ordinary people don't. So, but our tradition is more the monastic tradition taught in America. And to branch out from that, like Katie's talking about, and to branch out in social activism, that is, those are new practices for us. And when I was studying with Katagiri Roshi, we would ask him, we should go to this protest, we should do this. And he would say, sit Zazen, sit Zazen, sit Zazen, you know? And so, but it's a new world. You know, it's a new world.
It is. And we're taking a monastic practice and we're moving it into lay practice. And we're getting some wonderful things from that because lay people can participate in those wonderful monastic practices, have a very deep practice, but also it's a big change as well. And it's an evolution that's going to continue for a long time.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for this talk.
Thank you. John.
Yeah, just looking at this, it can look a little daunting, and I think you kind of got the point across, but you know, if we look out the windows here, there's no two trees alike out here. Every one of them has a unique shape, and each one of us is unique as well. So it's not like we have to feel guilty if we're not totally balanced and doing every part of this diagram here. But I think you got the point across, but I think it's kind of important to emphasize that.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think I should add that, you know, it's not necessary to try to do all of these or do them systematically, you know. And in fact, that might be too much. You might get spread a little too thin. So it's important to, you know, pick the ones that are appropriate for you. So thanks for mentioning that. Yes, Leslie, and then here, and then there. Yes, Leslie, please.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you for the talk. I enjoyed it. And when Judy was talking, it made me think about one of my first questions I had when I came here. What is the difference between a monk and a priest? And from what I understood, the monk is the one that just sits zazen. That's very, it's a very cloistered practice, usually, where the priest incorporates that into action in the world. So just like a priest of any religion, part of your, a big part of what you do is service to others. And so for me, that was a real big distinction to make right at the beginning, because I can't cloister myself off. My life does not allow that. Although there are times I would really like it if it did. Most of the time my life does not allow that. So priest work is quite different, because it's that using what we gain when we go in, going out. So I really like this tree idea of all the ways it can go out.
Right.
So,
yeah, thank you.
I was surprised that you mentioned improv at some point in your lesson, because I recently started to practice it. And I found that growing up, I had a very rigid idea of what a Buddha was. Like very rigid, strict practice, no sense of humor really. And I found that as I practice improv, you're creating these characters and I'm expanding this idea of what a Buddha can be. So, it expanded my practice, if you want.
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning that.
That's great. Thank you. Yes.
I would like to say that I find it helpful to try a few different things and keep them as part of my routine in my life. So it's not just choosing this or that, but knowing, 2, 3, 4 things that work for you in your life that support who you are and how you want to, move through life. And that helps balance you in a number of different ways.
Thank you. Yeah, and it may be that one, tries on a lot of different things and then finds a few that seem just really appropriate and supportive, and it practices those over a long period of time. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. So I grew up in a religious tradition where tradition and custom, ritual was very important. This is how we do it. And I sort of go back and forth with it myself, on the importance and value of it. Would you mind commenting on, you mentioned sort of forms, the oryoki and things of that nature. Would you mind commenting just on how you see what is the value, what's the point, how does that benefit practice?
Sure. We have some very precise forms. If you come on Saturday morning, you'll find that we chant, we all bow together at the same time. It's many of these things we do have been done this way for a long time. Or yogi meals at retreats the same way. So it's very well defined. And I think that really helps us because you can kind of give yourself to it when it's kind of intricate and you're being asked to do it. And when you start with an oryoki meal, often you're worried about what's going to happen next. But if you do it enough times, it just becomes natural and you're just doing it. And it's like a dance you've done many times before, and you can lose yourself in it. And that's the real beauty of it. And I think another beauty of these forms is that even though we're trying to do them precisely, we hold them very lightly. It's not a sacred thing where you're going to get in trouble if you do it wrong, because everybody makes mistakes. I make mistakes when I'm leading these rituals, and when I make a mistake, I acknowledge my mistake, I let it go, and I move on. But these rituals are here to help us, and holding them lightly, being able to make a mistake and not getting too upset about that is a helpful thing as well. So ritual can often kind of bring us to that edge of like perfectionism, or whatever the opposite of perfectionism is. If we have one of those things going on, ritual may challenge us and be a pretty helpful practice. So, thanks for asking. All right, well, if there's no one else, why don't we stop there and turn this over to our esteemed Doan, John.